The Supreme Court is hearing the most consequential case regarding abortion since the overturning of Roe v. Wade this week. The oral arguments began on the case that will decide the future of Mifepristone, which is the abortion pill that has become widely controversial in the United States recently. It's also not just important for abortion access. This case will also define the role of the FDA for years to come. It's basically asking, what powers will the courts have in overriding and overruling the regulations set by these regulatory institutions?
Okay.
How much power does a court have? Can a judge overrule an FDA? FDA found Mifepristone to be safe and effective, right? A lower court judge determined, no, not safe, not effective.
Okay.
Needs to be banned for other reasons. So, how does that... The role between the justices and the court system versus the regulatory agencies are going to be in flux here.
Instantly, I'm skeptical. Like, the whole point of the executive agency is to make determinations like that.
I know. And then the judge was coming out with the determination instead.
Yeah, that makes no sense.
So 3 members of the court's right flank expressed doubts about the legality and even the wisdom of allowing a coalition of anti-abortion medical groups to challenge the FDA's conclusion about the safety of Mifepristone, which is good to see. I'm happy that there was a pretty good rebuke to this line of thinking. Also, put this in perspective, this pill is used in nearly 2/3 of all abortions. Wow. And there isn't a large death rate from Mifepristone that's causing this massive amount of damage to people's body. It's not happening. The pill is widely used and it's widely considered safe. Clarence Thomas and Alito were eager to grill attorneys for the Biden administration about if these FDA policies were even allowed due to the Comstock Act. Now, we've talked about the Comstock Act before.
Yeah.
The Comstock Act came in the 1870s. It's the 1870s era law that bans people from receiving or sending lewd materials through the U.S. Postal Service. Now, lewd materials included pornography, all this other stuff. So now they're kind of suggesting that this lewd material thing could be considered for Mifepristone. We talked about this a few episodes ago. Comstock was the guy who wanted to ban pornography and was anti-masturbation nationally.
Wasn't the Comstock Act neutered at some point?
It was neutered. This is another question. The statutes that are related to this have been very clear that the only thing FDA... No, hold on. I apologize. There has also been a ruling related to this that I'm blanking on right now, but there is precedent saying that the Comstock Act does not apply to Mifepristone. I wish I could find it on my sheet. I guess I didn't put it down.
Okay.
But that does exist somewhere. But, all precedent is made to be overruled with these courts. So they're just, they don't agree. Thomas actually directly asks if the FDA, they ask the defendant if she thinks personally the FDA violated the Comstock Act, to which the lawyer replied, I quote, "I think this court should think hard about the mischief it would invite if it allowed agencies to start taking action based on statutory responsibilities that Congress has assigned to other agencies." So what this defendant is arguing here, they're saying it's not even our authority to enforce the Comstock Act. It's not in our jurisdiction. The FDA is supposed to stick to picking which drugs and foods are safe for human consumption, not to abide by Comstock.
Okay.
Then it needs to be in a whole other thing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The statutes say very clearly, and another quote, the only thing the FDA can take into account for restrictions are safety and efficacy concerns, not related to other stuff.
Yeah, the FDA wouldn't be on trial for the pills being mailed.
Right.
Someone else would be on trial.
Someone else would be. That's not the FDA's problem, even if it is Comstock related, right?
Yeah.
Which could be a whole other argument.
Yeah. It's like, could you not produce pornographic magazines just because they could get mailed and then violate the Comstock Act?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, again, this case is centering around the question, what role does the court have in stopping federal agencies from imposing regulations? And so Gorsuch makes this statement. Basically, he's looking at this case, and a lot of the doctors that are bringing this case or in reference to this case say that they see women who have bad reactions to Mifepristone, and then they have to perform emergency surgery on them. which I don't know all the facts behind this, but I think that they quoted that it said that it's happened 5 times within all the doctors that they had present at the thing. But Gorsuch says, this case seems like a prime example of turning what could be a small lawsuit into a nationwide legislative assembly on an FDA rule or any other federal government action. So Gorsuch is pretty much saying, like, you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater with this line of thinking. You're endangering like the whole entire FDA process. This is not the right form to do this.
That's extremely encouraging to me, honestly, because what I think about these kinds of cases being brought into these highly conservative Texas courts, right, where they're trying to just find favorable judges to enact their will, whether it's against the spirit of the law or not.
Absolutely.
And Gorsuch, I mean, I'm sure, again, these Supreme Court justices, even the conservatives, even if they have agendas, I think they do also care about the legitimacy of their institution.
Oh, they love it.
Want to uphold it. And so that quote from Gorsuch to me just sounds like, let's not make this a clown show.
One of the things that I am interested in is I haven't heard any like delegation level arguments. So if you watch the show regularly, I always talk about the New Deal. And like one of the issues FDR had was the Supreme Court kept saying, you've delegated too much power to the executive. The congressional branch gave the executive branch too much power. I'm shocked we're not hearing the arguments that Congress has delegated too much power to the executive branch in regards to the FDA. Because like nowhere in the FDA statute does it say that Mifepristone is safe. It's the FDA making that decision on its own, right? Like Congress did not say Mifepristone is safe.
Yeah.
Congress gave another independent body the right to say if Mifepristone is safe. And so I'm shocked that I didn't hear the plaintiff go after that delegation authority.
Okay, I disagree.
Why?
Because...
Well, I obviously disagree with that line of thinking, but...
No, I'm saying I'm not surprised by it because even though I can understand delegation is a problem in some cases, this is extremely specific, right? Like if it's not the FDA's, if it's not within their purview to determine whether Mifepristone is safe, then it's also not in their purview to determine that any other drug is safe, which means it's all of a sudden it's up to Congress.
Yes.
Always.
Yes.
To determine if every single drug is safe.
Yeah.
So I think that would be a much sillier argument even.
Well, then how
that
do
they
you
tried to bring for this?
Well, when we have the EPA related arguments, one of the very common ones is that they've overreached their delegatory authority by regulating fossil fuel emissions. That they've gone too far and they've overreached their delegation authority by going after carbon. Now, is that as ridiculous?
I don't think that's as ridiculous.
Okay.
No, because that's more like a one and done, right? Or even like Congress could say a certain number for the emissions, or they could peg it to something and have the emissions slowly go down. But if like even the emission, like saying that emissions should be regulated by the EPA, I think is something that is non-specific enough, that's high level enough to make it reasonable to ask for a congressional delegation to say that before saying the EPA can do it unilaterally. I think based on probably also history of the EPA being created, I think its mandate probably didn't really have much to do with limiting emissions. And so like, yes, I'm sure there is language in there to say protect the environment, and somewhat circuitously preventing emissions or reducing emissions protects the environment. But I think in my head, that's more distant, and it makes sense that you would want a congressional action to close that bound.
All right. Yeah, it makes sense to me. Another one, I guess I'm curious I didn't hear, was the fact that they didn't really go into the whole concept of this being a murder pill. Like they say all the time on TV and in the media that it's the murder pill because you're killing a baby.
Yeah.
But they didn't mention that one time in court.
Interesting.
You know?
So they had no faith in the idea that they could convince the judges that a fetus is a person.
Exactly. Which gives me great hope that they thought that they couldn't even convince Alito or Thomas that a fetus is a person. That gives me great hope.
Yeah.
Right.
Oof.
So
I'm surprised. I am surprised as well.
I am surprised that they didn't go after that line of thinking. I really am.
Because I think it's hard. I don't know. I think it's hard to really convincingly win the argument that a fetus isn't a person. I don't think that's a hard black and white thing that you can argue.
Yeah.
So.